Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in this world. Here we are with another podcast on issues worth hearing another opinion about in times when money matter in a digital revolution nearly consumed, as our guest described in our last conversation, but still a while to go until it settles. Today again, Mr. Gregory Porter, a freelance sales consultant and broker that explored the investing world from London.
And thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to come again and be with you, my dear friends. Oh, where should I begin? We're in a moment when commodities come to our attention because money at the end of the day is a representation of a value, and we perceive commodities as value. And by commodities, I mean tangible items of value. We call assets gold, oil barrels, coffee bags, grain piles, and so on. Gold is the commodity that is most relevant to suggest that money is a promise of value at the end of the day. Because when we use money, we use promises. And now is the time to confront the promise with its promised value. We don't worship gold. Here we must acknowledge its qualities, but it would be so much to talk about why gold and gold again that I think we will have to leave it for the next podcast. What it means is that we are confronting the outcome of our choices in the last 40 or 50 years. We are confronting also the outcome of our last 10 years' choices. We are confronting the outcome of our last 3 years' choices, and so on, with other confrontations as a consequence of our choices. So in these moments when we are getting to the bottom of the bag full of promises, hopes, and wishful thinking, the reality hits hard and brings us all on the ground of who is who and what is what, and there is a time to pay back or make a repayment plan or find a solution or new creditors, because the ones that credit us up until now don't want to credit us anymore. Global financial crises means dreamy spending time over. And by the way, global financial crisis is a crisis in the Western world. For the BRICS nations is not that much of a crisis, but a transition. I can speak for hours about why the credit got all of us here, but maybe another podcast would be more suitable. So imagine there are two men. One is indebted and continues to borrow more than he earns, and so his total debt ceiling increases more and more, and one is indebted, but instead of borrowing more and more, earns more than his rhythm of borrowing, so his total debt decreases. Those two were good friends once upon a time when they had the same interest to produce and borrow within their means. Now they are apart. They cannot be friends anymore because the one that produces a lot doesn't have time to spend, and the one that is spending over his means doesn't have the hopeful prospect the other one does. They are polite with each other. They communicate cordially, maybe, and sometimes they clash, but they are not in the same boat. And this is the picture. The one that spends way over his means is, metaphorically speaking, the Western world, Europe Union, UK, United States, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, broadly. And the other busy man is, metaphorically speaking, the BRICS. 5 nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. 5 nations that decided to get together, to grow together, to support each other. These 5 nations realized that they were more powerful if they exchanged in much more intimate ways ideas and experiences about how to face their common specific financial or economic issues. And the BRICS is a getting healthy man, so to speak, while the Western one is still strong but visibly weakened, and something is not right at all with him because credit and debt are not something good. However, we try to accommodate it. They are both confronting issues and problems and upheavals because life doesn't spare anyone. But one had a great opportunity he took advantage of and has a solid plan and a promising future, while the other one is looking for solutions and didn't even find one yet to make the recovering plan. BRICS and the Western world are not enemies. They are apart only because they are in different states of mind. different stages and different plans. Different means different, not opposed, and other than the fact that they are not opposed, they also vitally need each other. Are they in conflict? Politicians know better how much in conflict BRICS and Western world are. There are always conflicts, just like every human being faces different opinions and steps by mistake on someone else's toe. The one that raises the standards in an environment will be in conflict with those that lose an opportunity due to the new standards in the same environment. But I know for sure that in any conflict, there is always a peace plan and a war plan. Unfortunately, I am not a war expert, so I can only talk about peace plans here. And I know the peace plans inside out because they are done based on facts, based on markets, natural evolution, based on tangible assets, based on common sense, which is a most English virtue. The difference between those two plans is this. In a war plan, the parties put down their inconveniences, accuse themselves, blame themselves, and deny each other's contribution. And the list still goes on. The peace plan instead sounds like this. Let us see what we have, not what we don't have. Let us see who we are, not who we are not. Let us see how we can close the gap. Let us see how useful we can be to each other. Let us talk solutions. Wars come and go. Human nature is not made for constant war. That is why peace plans will always, again and again, be preferred. This is my view. If your audience expects me to accuse and blame Russia for what is happening, means talking war plans. What is happening in Ukraine is devastating and regrettable enough. I am not here to dwell on talking war plans, slang. Every war had its instigators revealed sooner or later. Every war has its criminals judged sooner or later by supreme earthly courts. And every war has its propagators of the war plans against peace plans judged by the divinity that created the human to thrive in peace, not to be destroyed in the war, whatever that divinity is. Because as a Buddhist says, you will be punished by your actions, not for your actions. I do align with the natural tendency of humankind to thrive in peace, in my view. So let us go ahead and understand where we are, who is who, what is what, and why this situation worldwide matters from a financial point of view. So before we go ahead, BRICS and the Western world are not opposed but different. They are in different situations. They have different prospects, different concerns, and especially different concerns, and especially different financial needs. We cannot judge India for making the middleman between Russia and the rest of the world because Russian oil and gas are important to everyone. Remember how much affected the United States beginning of the year when OPEC reduced its oil production, and Mr. Biden had to use the emergency reserves to keep the prices low and fight inflation. When you are thirsty, you don't look if the water is Russian or not. You need that water, you grab it and you drink it. The usual Russian oil and gas consumers were gasping. And I bet they asked India to play this game so that they can get the oil and gas. We can put sanctions on Russia's commerce that hits Russia but not us. Russia is heavily sanctioned in other fields, rather psychologically. But it is what it is. They have something that they don't struggle to sell, something that we, the rest of the world, struggle to buy more than they are available to sell. We want it, we need it, we are gasping for it, and we would do anything to get it. And if India did wrong to buy it and sell it to us, if we really wanted to sanction Russia, we could have not bought it at all from India, and India would have sunk in its own wrongdoing. But we, the rest of the world, were glad a solution was found. Because peace means solutions. We must keep in mind that India is a very long-term, intimate partner with Russia. After World War II, India developed what is happening now in China, a kind of socialism open to capitalism, and this socialism applied was also due to its association with Russia. We cannot just sever these ties. There might be animosities, there might be misunderstandings, who knows? Maybe some come and go geopolitics, like so many local conflictual geopolitics all over the world. But These two countries know each other, and the old say, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. The United States was a great builder in the world up until recently, but now the United States is heavily troubled by its very high debt ceiling and the train of problems this huge debt drags behind itself. And now they cannot do it as comfortably as before, while China is thriving and looking for ways to increase business revenue, as they are perfectly aware their workforce is becoming more expensive than other countries. Their workforce also seems to be shrinking due to the one child policy years ago. China builds massively, also because they want to drop the dollar off their accounts and because they are ready to depend less and less and less on the dollar. The dropping off of the dollar for assets party started many years ago. Nobody is against the dollar. Let us make it clear. It is natural for the world to gravitate towards stronger currencies or alternatives.
If I may add, a massive contribution the dollar had and the Western world is not so much aware of or didn't make any difference for is being alternative currency for countries that went through hyperinflation. I witnessed myself the massive devaluation of the Romanian coin between 1990 and 2004. The Romanian lion, as we call in Romania the national coin, the lion, was devalued 10,000 times. People used alternative currencies in the same time for many things. And I remember the dollar was very demanding on the black market. During the Ceausescu regime, the official exchange was 4 lions for a dollar, while on the black market was 10 lions for a dollar because it was illegal to have foreign currency in possession at that time. In 2004, the Romanian coin was stabilized and its three-letter code for the foreign market is RON, which means Romanian new coin. This new coin that we still call lion is pegged in a way to the euro. I mean, it holds on to the same ratio with the euro ever since, more or less. People was using also German marks as well. It was fascinating for me to see how everyone was affected by this phenomenon and how it is possible to use alternative currencies in the same economy, especially in that time when you had to exchange it physically at a foreign currency exchange bureau or on the black market, where many made a living out of the dollar and German marks exchange needs of the public. Actually, this is the solution, and this is the reason of publishing and creating this channel. Believe in alternative currencies, dare to use them, will not bite, it is possible, it is fair, it is legal, it is okay, don't get scared. You have to step out of your comfort zone because it is something you've never done before. You don't have to exchange them on the black market as we had 2 years ago in Romania, because now the exchange is done electronically and especially, as you suggested, think solutions, which is alternative currency. Don't think problem, which is inflation. I see now that the Zimbabwe gold currency is in a way an alternative currency because it's a digital gold-backed currency with the option to have the physical gold in hands, which is going along with the old unbacked by gold currency that experienced hyperinflation in the last 15 years. I would say, in my modest and humble opinion, is a way to make use of the demand for a more stable currency and to encourage people at least to buy gold instead of United States dollar.
Oh, yes, the dollar has been a strong financial shoulder quite a few times. Greece and Hungary in 1946, Yugoslavia in 1994, and Zimbabwe, as you said as well, in 2008. Turkey and Poland faced hyperinflation in the same time with Romania. Italian lira was devalued heavily. The Russian ruble went through massive devaluation. People had a much stronger currency to turn to. The dollar honored its commitment to making international trade easier. With the Cold War, the dollar didn't penetrate the East European countries that much, but after the Berlin Wall fell, all East European countries changed direction, and Russia was decimated by its perestroika. which in Russian means restructuring the dollar, was a meaningful vector in connecting those two so different at that time worlds. I remember news for years talking about Mr. Gorbachev and perestroika, just like now we speak about Xi Jinping and de-dollarization. After all this opening to the West of the communist countries, we all started 30 years ago the new globalization phase, which was a massive international trade increase. Starting with 1945 and even before, having dollars meant the opportunity to trade, buy resources, sell your production. We saved a lot of the negotiating time having already a common currency. It was a big opportunity for the dollar to become such a demanded currency. A 1971 gold standard dropped. People were shocked. Oh my God, the dollar is not backed by gold anymore. So what? We exchanged buying dollar, bought what we needed to buy, sold what we needed to sell, exchanged back for shorter and shorter term, and got on with it. We didn't sweat the inconvenience. We found a solution. Globalization came and made us so busy. We didn't have time to meet for another Bretton Woods. We got around dollar slight inflation for 20 years successfully, just did the most of globalization, and now globalization is nearly consumed. The dollar helped massively. During this globalization, we became increasingly and insanely dependent on each other, all the countries all over the world. And the United States dollar helped a lot to make this dependence on each other practical. The dollarization happened already in many stages, and let us define what is de-dollarization. It is a term used to describe a reality called less and less demand for the United States dollar. Is it good? Is it bad? Rain is good for those who want a good harvest and not so good for what want to play with the kite. It is a reality. The dollar did its job when we most needed it. It was a solution. For many situations, still is a solution. There are other alternative solutions for today because today we live in different times. But the dollar is still a currency that we appreciate and value. When the president of France, Charles de Gaulle in 1971, asked the gold instead of the dollar was the first step of the dollarization. Is Xi Jinping or Putin to blame that the president of France asking the gold instead of the dollar? No. The accounts in dollars fluctuating up and down, and dollars acquired only for transactions for shorter and shorter terms is a de-dollarization. As Xi Jinping or Putin to be blamed for the United States dropping the gold standard and becoming a fiat currency? No. The electronic payment system and the digital revolution made foreign exchange absolutely comfortable. And you didn't even need to buy dollars, so less and less demand to open accounts in the dollar. This is another de-dollarization. Did Xi Jinping or Putin launch the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, which processes electronic payments that include foreign exchange fees and conversion? No. Is it Jinping or Putin at fault that we get old and rotten and die eventually? No. In a natural process for things to come, to grow, to transform, to evolve, to be dropped off when they don't serve anymore, to be improved when they can be improved, and so on. Let us put it this way, and these are not my words, but I find them perfectly describe the reality. The dollar is just worth less. The dollar is not worthless. Even after the dollar ceased to be backed by gold in 1971, it became supported by the military services the United States provided globally, which held inherent value. Building and maintaining a highly capable and responsive army is a cost that is often underestimated. During times of war, the United States may spend only slightly more on war consumables, but the expenses of maintaining a well-prepared war machine are significant. Let's imagine purchasing a real army tank. The initial cost, maintenance expenses, and the specialized routes needed to keep it in optimal condition. When it is finally used, the costs mostly revolve around fuel. The majority, approximately 95, of the expenses are associated with ownership. Similarly, the United States invests significantly in maintaining a prepared military force. even during periods of relative peace. This holds true for other countries as well, such as China, Russia, India, North Korea, the UK, France, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. The expenses tied to maintaining their respective armies should not be underestimated. There is a tendency to accuse and blame the United States for various reasons, but remember, accusation, blame means to talk about war plans, means to support war plans, means to align ourselves with war plans, means to become warriors for war cause, not for a peace cause. Back to our peace plan talk, BRICS locomotive is the China that is doubled by Russia. This BRICS story started 30 years ago when China firmly established its development trajectory. And in the same time, Russia regained control of its resources, transforming itself from a ravaged nation to a formidable superpower again. But Russia, unlike China, needed allies more than anything to make this dream come true. So it is Russia that initiated this project to gather nations with the same interest under a common goals plan, offering the Russian resources at low price for countries willing to align themselves 20 or even 10 years ago. It was still too early for these countries to leave a strong shoulder that the Western world still was at that time, and still is, don't get me wrong. But now the tables turned because China offers more and more. China is leading in technology and had huge achievements, while the Western world weakened, allowing the credit to flood their economies. The emerging countries of the BRICS are a surprise for everyone, including themselves. The rise is still unsettled and surprising, and the whole world is in awe looking for what's next, because China is indeed competing with what the Western world offers and is winning ground. The United States offered military assistance for Saudi Arabia. What can China offer more, not being yet as strong from a military point of view as United States? Unbelievable. China seized a massive opportunity to broker peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran. China surprised all of us for thousands of years. They are back again in the trailblazer business. Do we want to stop our trailblazers? Who wants Western world? Will soon find solutions for their temporary issues and will take the lead again. Until then, it is what it is. Trailblazers are the strongest ones. Another surprise is the new commercial route called Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion project launched 10 years ago to smoothen and streamline trade around the world through a network of railway, airlines, and shipping routes, and also to increase China's influence. The project is not a BRICS nations project, but everything one of these countries does with impact on the rest of the world is to be analyzed, because BRICS will not stop at these 5 nations. There are other 30 nations that applied to become partners: Saudi Arabia, Iran, Mexico, Algeria, Argentina, Egypt, Indonesia, and others. Africa is a very rich in raw materials continent. The multipolar world is not to be introduced and shyly thrive. The multipolar world is already here. More than one superpower competes for exploiting the riches of the African countries. The United States offered on its own, in a situation called unipolarity, assistance for African countries for decades with exploiting their resources. What could China do more to win them over? You will not believe it. It was a surprise for all of us. They offered African countries not only assistance with exploiting their resources, but they know these countries have even cheaper workforce. So they decided to build factories that process their raw materials right next to the mines, offering to these countries 2 revenue streams: money for their resources and money for their workforce. These countries will boost their economies just like that. They don't even need to join the BRICS. What a big win for them. China relieved their own crowded transport lines by building high-speed trains and railways. And let me share with you a beautiful thing about China. China is a very hard-working nation that takes time off, all in the SME time during the well-known common national holiday in the first 8 October days every year, the Chinese Golden Week. Imagine the whole China's population traveling in a week from high-end rich towns back to the place of birth in the secluded countryside to spend this holy day with the rest of the family. And now, because already have a valuable experience in this kind of project, China targeted the most crowded places in the world, like Mecca during the Mecca's pilgrimage, with same high-speed trains and railways offers that no one can resist. Latin American countries become more and more interested in this common emerging goals club. But all these countries are not dismissing the United States, as it looks like they're joining other countries that have the same financial goals and needs. The United States is not emerging or thriving, is already a power. They started spending their wealth until redefining their goals. The United States is at a higher level. From a financial technical point of view, emerging countries do not need to stimulate their economies by accommodating more and more credit. Their economies, at least China's economy, is flooded with real wealth that is not a lie. We in the Western world, we accommodate credit, which is a lie, until it's paid off. China and the BRICS countries partially are flooded with the wealth of their workforce. They need a currency backed by gold to store this wealth. We don't need to store the credit. We have to spend the credit. We need a fiat currency. BRICS countries don't need to spend their wealth, and they need to store their wealth, and they need a strong currency. We speak about two different types of economies. And I will say it again, as I understand your audience or your niche is formed mainly by people of other fields of expertise, not financial ones, and so they need to hear things again and again before the subtleties sink in. We, the Western world, accommodate credit with the purpose to spend it. We allow credit to encourage people to spend. We don't need to store the credit. We have to spend the credit. We need a fiat currency, which we have our money, are not designed to store, because credit is not to be stored but spent. The BRICS countries produce more than the rhythm of borrowing, so they step by step accumulate wealth rather than increase the debt ceiling, and they don't want to spend this wealth. They want to store this thin for some of these countries' wealth. What currency is suitable for storing value? Gold-backed currencies, commodity-backed currencies. Two different types of economies with different financial needs. I have diabetes, and you have a lack of zinc in the body. Are we at odds with each other? No. I need a certain medication, and you need a certain food supplement. We are different, not opposed, for God's sake. We have to realize that these countries are very different, and they don't really like each other. They face a lot of differences of opinions, and they have different views and different religious values, and surmountable differences otherwise. But these countries are unified by a common goal, despite so many reasons to fight against each other. And this goal is the economic growth, because they are growing. Well, we Western world are grown up economically. We are spending our wealth, while the BRICS countries are thriving. Is like the children. You see many children play together. Maybe they don't like each other, but playing the game and growing up is fascinating for them. Genuine concern the Western world has, and BRICS nations share only partially, is the climate problem. And this is because the Western world doesn't pollute the air due to reduced industry parks, and BRICS nations that pollute a lot more, as they produce not only for themselves, but also for so many other consumers in the world. At the end of the day, someone has to produce, and there is a conflict of views that divides ideologically the two camps.
I noticed decades ago, while still living in Romania, that is an Eastern European country, during the Ceausescu regime, that he himself, like the BRICS countries, had a different opinion about the United States' help, support, and initiative towards emerging countries. At that time, I thought it was because we were a communist country while the United States was not. On reflection, I think that the United States, although have been a very strong shoulder for decades for so many countries around the world, and the world owes so much to their contribution, there is something the BRICS nations want to do a little bit different. I think that the United States have something like a role model that proposes for everyone, and that role model works as long as a certain country doesn't have a model at all. while countries that have a plan and know what they want and that are fired up and are looking forward and even excited to implementing their own ideas want to escape this generative pattern proposed by United States. Or might be that this pattern is a little bit outdated as United States is confronting more and more issues in their own yard and don't really have time to update and upgrade these patterns that doesn't really resonate anymore with the emerging economies like the BRICS nations. Okay, so to resume up in a way, although we can speak for hours about this fascinatingly sensational subject, BRICS nations are in a more optimistic position, while the Western countries are in a rather pessimistic situation, at least for the moment, due to the credit that is becoming considerably discomfortable. What do you think would turn the Western world prospects from pessimistic to optimistic again?
What a beautiful question. I wondered many times, where is our Western world going by raising the debt ceiling and pushing credit in society? Because we don't see any signs of stopping or slowing down. They're not exactly what will turn the tables. But looking back at what made the BRICS nations change the mood and the prospects and the hope, it was an opportunity. They didn't even dream to get this opportunity to produce for other countries as well as for themselves. They didn't ask for it and they didn't design it. The opportunity came. Globalization took by storm the whole world. And you're also happy to make the most of producing with low cost and competent workforce. Other countries were so happy to offer their workforce in the change of technology. At the end of the day, the Western world rather spends by increasing debt, whilst the BRICS nations rather produce increasing avenues, but someday, something will happen and the Western world will provide more than will consume to rebalance their books. At the moment, Western world provides financial services and technology, yet still not enough.
Do you think that these BRICS nations have in plan or intend in any way to dominate the world, or especially China, let's say?
First, they are not that strong as yet, and they at least declared they want a multipolar world, not a unipolar one. The sad thing is that these countries, at least China and Russia, want to isolate themselves more. They build their own internet data network and they try to promote less and less speaking in English in between themselves. Let us hope, though, we can still remain all together. We've had such a great time, especially in the last 30 years, after the ex-communist countries opened up and the globalism made all of us forget who we were, embracing with huge enthusiasm the opportunity to trade efficiently and work together and build relationships. Let us hope that another thing that will unite us all together again, the Western world and the BRICS nations, will come again. To your success, to your achievements, to your financial dignity and confidence, a big hug and firm handshake to you all, my friend. All of the best.
Once again, we had the pleasure of hearing Mr. Gregory Porter, who provided valuable insights into a subject that directly affects our financial reality. He not only shared his opinion, but hope in his own very special way. Thank you for being part of our second podcast just by listening to it entirely. And if all goes well, we look forward to seeing you in our next podcast, where we will discuss more issues that are worth exploring from financial point of view and provide you with another perspective. Thank you very much. All the best.